Hello, Math 3 students. Today we are going to talk about trig word problems. So essentially what this is application of the SOHCAHTOA problems we've done before. So before you would just be given a triangle, but now you're going to be given a word problem, and you have to construct a diagram based off the word you're given, and then use SOHCAHTOA to solve. All right. So really there's two terms that you have to be familiar with here. We have angle of elevation. So if you ever hear angle of elevation, it's measured from the ground up. Think of it like an elevator that only goes up. And it's always on the inside of the triangle. In the diagram at the left, X marks the angle of elevation of the top of the tree as seen from a point on the ground. So this would be your angle of elevation. All right. Then we have angle of depression. So the angle of depression is always outside the triangle, and it is never inside the triangle. In the diagram at the left, X marks the angle of depression of a boat. Now, one thing that's kind of, you'll end up figuring out here, is that the angle of depression ends up going in the same location as the angle of elevation. If you recall parallel lines, transversals, you find that you end up with two congruent angles. So you'll see here, right, we can take our angle of depression and put it inside of the triangle. All right, so we'll do some, I feel like we could sit here all day and talk about definitions, but I think really doing the problems is what's going to help, and then we'll refer back to these images as we do the problems. So for number one, it says, a tower casts a shadow that is 60 feet long when the angle of elevation of the sun is 65 degrees. How tall is the tower? So one thing I want to say here is if you do not have a picture drawn, I will be very sad. For each of these problems, you need to draw a picture and you need to label the picture. So do not try and set up a trig expression without drawing a picture. You'll look like a goofball. All right, make sure you draw a picture. So let's see. I'm going to go ahead and draw my tower. All right. So you have a tower casts a shadow that is 60 feet long. So we'll have our shadow here. And it is 60 feet long. The angle of elevation of the sun is 65, so we could go ahead and draw this in at 65 degrees. And they want to know how tall the tower is, so this is the X we're looking for here. So, if this is our angle, we have opposite, and we have adjacent. So, we're going to use tangent. So, we just do tangent of 65 equals, and then we've got our opposite, which is what we're solving for, over our adjacent, which is 60. So when we cross multiply, we get 60 tangent of 65 equals X. And I'll go ahead and just pull it up, the calculator on here. 60 tangent of 65. And we get 128, and I don't know, does it say word around? Nearest hundredth. So it'd be 128.67. Very cool. All right, let's try another one. Matt is standing on the top of a cliff at 305 feet above the lake. The measurement of the angle of depression to the boat of the lake is 42 degrees. How far is the boat from the base of the cliff? All right, so let's go ahead. Let's draw our cliff here. Oh, whoops, I didn't draw like I wanted it to. So this is our cliff. And they tell us that the cliff is 305 feet. All right. Then they tell us that the angle of depression is 42. So what that means is that this guy here is 42. Right, if we look at our diagram here, angle of depression goes right there. So what we're going to do is we're going to put that into here, right? If you recall from last year, I'm actually doing this with my Math 2 kids right now. When you've got two parallel lines cut by a transversal, these two lines would be congruent. So we've got our two parallel lines here. This is our transversal. We've got our two congruent angles. All right, so we can write that 42 in there. Let's see. And then we have a boat, so we could draw a little sailboat here. I know, I'm really good at drawing. And they want to know how far the boat is from the base of the cliff. So this is important, right? The base of the cliff is going to be this guy here. If they had said, like, you know, how far is the boat from Matt, we would have had to use the hypotenuse. But in this case, they want to know from the base of the cliff, so that's where our x goes. So if this is our angle, we have opposite, we have adjacent. We're going to use tangent again. So we're going to do tangent of 42 equals, and then we've got our opposite, which is 305, over our adjacent, which is x. So we'll cross multiply, and we get x tangent of 42 equals 305. And then we divide by tangent of 42. So we get 305 divided by tangent of 42, which is 338 and then we'll do 74. So we want to the nearest hundredth. Ooh, what's the units on that? That is feet. All right. Let's go ahead. Ooh, okay. Well, this is good because I was anticipating the next question. So it says Matt is standing at the top of the cliff, 300 feet above the lake. The measurement of the angle of depression is 42. How far is the boat from Matt? So remember how I mentioned when they said base of the cliff, our x went here. Well, the boat from Matt is actually this distance, right? So now our x needs to go with our hypotenuse. So let's draw our picture again. We've got our cliff. We've got our Matt hanging out up here. We've got our angle of depression of 42, which means this guy's 42. We've got our little boat. I wish I was on a boat. And we got that the cliff is 305 feet tall. But now our x is going to go here because we want to measure the distance between Matt and the boat. So the thing with these kinds of problems is you really got to pay attention to what they're asking because that's really going to affect your drawing. So you have to read very carefully. So now we look if this is our angle. We've got opposite and we've got hypotenuse. So we're going to have to use sine here. So we're going to do sine. Well, I'm like running out of space. Sorry. We'll pull the calculator back up in a second. So we've got sine of 42 equals, and then we got opposite, which is 305, over our hypotenuse, which we don't know. So we cross multiply. We'll divide, and we get x equals 305 divided by sine of 42. And then I'll pull up my calculator again here. And we get 455.82. Very nice.